Welcome to Global Conflicts and Geopolitics, your trusted source for real-time updates and in-depth analysis on global tensions, military conflicts, and power shifts shaping our world. Tonight, tensions in the Middle East are once again spiraling after Israel launched a series of heavy airstrikes on Hamas targets across Gaza, following what officials described as one of the deadliest attacks by Palestinian militants in recent weeks. The strikes, which began late last night and continued into the early hours of Thursday, have left much of northern Gaza in flames as regional powers brace for potential escalation. The Israeli Defense Forces confirmed that the operation involved fighter jets, drones, and artillery units targeting what they called Hamas command centers, weapons storage facilities, and tunnel networks. Israel says the campaign is a direct response to a coordinated rocket barrage that hit several Israeli towns near the Gaza border, killing at least 8 civilians and injuring dozens more. The IDF released footage showing precision airstrikes striking multiple sites simultaneously, describing it as one of the most extensive retaliatory operations since last year's conflict. In a brief statement, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said, "Hamas has crossed a red line, and Israel will respond with the full force of its defense capabilities. No one who threatens our citizens will be spared." Witnesses inside Gaza reported loud explosions and intense fire throughout the night, with ambulances rushing through the streets and local hospitals overwhelmed by casualties. Gaza's health ministry has confirmed dozens of deaths and over 100 injuries, though the numbers continue to rise as rescue teams search through rubble in several neighborhoods. In Khan Younis and Rafah, entire residential blocks were reportedly flattened. Residents say the strikes came without warning, a claim Israel denies, saying leaflets and text alerts were issued hours before the assault to minimize civilian harm. Humanitarian groups, however, warn that the situation is deteriorating rapidly. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs issued a statement calling for an immediate cessation of hostilities, urging both sides to avoid further escalation. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said he is deeply alarmed by the rising civilian toll and the risk of the conflict expanding beyond Gaza. The latest flare-up began after Hamas claimed responsibility for a deadly cross-border attack earlier this week that targeted an Israeli military outpost near the Erez crossing. The attack reportedly involved militants disguised as construction workers, opening fire and using explosives to breach the perimeter. The confrontation left at least 4 Israeli soldiers dead before reinforcements arrived. Following that incident, the Israeli government held an emergency security meeting in Tel Aviv, where Netanyahu and senior defense officials approved a broad operational response. Sources close to the meeting told local media that Israel's military chiefs pushed for a rapid, overwhelming show of force to deter further attacks and send a message to Hamas leadership. Hamas spokesperson Abu Ubaider responded with defiance, calling Israel's strikes a declaration of war against the Palestinian people. In a televised message, he warned that Hamas would expand the battlefield if Israeli attacks continued, vowing to launch long-range rockets deeper into Israeli territory. As the bombardment continued, Iran issued a statement condemning Israel's actions and expressing full support for what it called the Palestinian resistance. Tehran's foreign ministry accused Israel of committing war crimes under the silence of the international community and warned that continued aggression could ignite a broader regional confrontation. Iranian state media also reported that the country's Revolutionary Guard forces have been placed on heightened alert amid speculation that the United States could respond militarily if the conflict expands. The alert reportedly includes the deployment of air defense systems and naval units across the Persian Gulf, signaling Iran's concern about a potential U.S. or Israeli strike. In Washington, the Biden administration condemned Hamas's initial attack, but urged Israel to exercise restraint in its response. A senior White House official told reporters that the U.S. recognizes Israel's right to defend itself, but emphasized that civilian lives must be protected. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the U.S. is engaged with regional partners to prevent a wider conflict. Pentagon sources confirmed that U.S. forces in the region, including bases in Qatar, Bahrain, and Iraq, have been placed on alert status as a precautionary measure. The move follows intelligence suggesting Iran-backed militias in Iraq and Syria could use the current chaos to launch attacks on U.S. personnel or assets. In Tehran, Iranian commanders responded by issuing a rare public warning to the United States, stating that any American involvement in Israel's aggression will be met with direct response. The statement from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps declared that the Resistance Axis, a term referring to Iran's network of allied militias across the Middle East, is fully prepared for any escalation. Analysts say Iran's warning is not mere rhetoric. Over the past year, Tehran has significantly strengthened its coordination with armed groups in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. Many of these groups, including Hezbollah, have vowed to retaliate if Israel expands its campaign in Gaza or targets Iranian interests. Meanwhile, Israel has reportedly reinforced its northern borders with Lebanon amid concerns that Hezbollah could open a second front. The Israeli military confirmed that artillery units and air defenses have been repositioned in the Galilee region, and residents near the border have been advised to remain close to shelters. Lebanese media outlets reported that Hezbollah fighters were seen mobilizing near the border, but have not yet engaged. The group's leadership said it is monitoring developments closely and will not stand idle if the Palestinian people continue to be massacred. The situation has triggered a wave of diplomatic activity across the region. Egypt and Qatar, which have previously mediated ceasefires between Israel and Hamas, are reportedly holding urgent talks to de-escalate the crisis. Sources say both countries have reached out to U.S. and UN officials urging restraint on all sides. In Europe, reactions remain divided. The European Union called for maximum restraint, while Germany and France reaffirmed their support for Israel's right to self-defense. In contrast, Spain and Ireland issued statements condemning Israel's disproportionate response, highlighting the deep divisions within Europe over the conflict. As international concern mounts, the humanitarian situation in Gaza is worsening. Power outages have spread across the enclave, and fuel shortages are crippling hospitals. The Red Crescent reported that emergency supplies are running dangerously low, warning that without international assistance, Gaza's medical infrastructure could collapse within days. Reports from the ground describe scenes of devastation. Journalists in Gaza City say smoke and dust blanket much of the skyline. Families are fleeing damaged buildings, and social media videos show civilians digging through rubble with their bare hands in search of survivors. For Israel, the escalation comes amid intense political pressure at home. Netanyahu's coalition government, already facing widespread protests over judicial reforms and internal divisions, now finds itself under growing scrutiny for its handling of security threats. Critics argue that repeated military operations in Gaza have failed to provide long-term security and instead deepen cycles of violence. Military analysts note that Israel's latest strikes appear aimed at degrading Hamas's military infrastructure rather than a full-scale invasion. However, they warn that prolonged bombardment without a political solution could draw in other actors, including Iran and Hezbollah, creating a multi-front confrontation. In Washington, the Pentagon's latest statement reaffirmed support for Israel's defense, but stressed that the U.S. does not seek a direct confrontation with Iran. Defense officials say they are maintaining open communication channels through intermediaries to prevent miscalculations. At the same time, U.S. intelligence agencies are monitoring movements of Iranian-backed groups in Iraq and Syria. Satellite imagery reportedly shows increased activity near several militia bases, suggesting preparations for possible rocket or drone attacks against U.S. or Israeli targets. Back in Tel Aviv, Israeli defense Minister Yoav Gallant said the military would continue operations until Hamas's ability to threaten Israeli citizens is eliminated. He added that no ceasefire is under consideration at this stage. The escalation has sent shockwaves through global financial markets. Oil prices surged by more than 4% on fears of disruption to Middle East supply lines, while regional stock markets saw sharp declines. Analysts warn that if the situation drags on, it could fuel broader economic instability across the region. Regional observers note that the conflict is not just about Gaza. It is part of a larger geopolitical contest involving Iran, Israel, and the United States. Each side is trying to assert influence amid shifting alliances and deepening mistrust. Iran's leadership views the crisis as a test of its deterrence strategy and its ability to mobilize allied groups against Israel and the U.S. Meanwhile, Israel sees the confrontation as an opportunity to weaken Hamas's military capabilities and send a warning to Tehran and Hezbollah. The Biden administration, for its part, faces a delicate balancing act supporting Israel while avoiding direct involvement in another Middle Eastern war. With the U.S. presidential election approaching, Washington's handling of this crisis could have significant domestic implications. In Tehran, senior clerics have called for national prayers in support of Gaza, while thousands of demonstrators marched through the capital chanting slogans against Israel and the United States. Iranian media outlets are portraying the situation as evidence of what they call Western hypocrisy, accusing the international community of ignoring Palestinian suffering. In Israel, air raid sirens continue to sound in southern towns as Hamas militants launch sporadic rocket fire despite the intense bombardment. The Iron Dome defense system has intercepted most incoming projectiles, but several have struck residential areas, adding to public anger and fear. As both sides dig in, diplomats warn that the window for de-escalation is closing. Regional intelligence sources suggest that if hostilities continue at the current pace, a broader war involving Hezbollah and Iranian-backed militias could erupt within days. For now, the Middle East stands on edge, Israel vowing to crush Hamas's military wing, Hamas promising revenge, Iran warning the U.S. against intervention, and Washington working urgently to contain a potential regional war. The world watches closely as yet another round of violence threatens to engulf the region. The coming hours may determine whether this crisis remains a limited confrontation or spirals into a wider and more devastating conflict with far-reaching consequences. As of this hour, both Israel and Hamas show no sign of backing down. Airstrikes continue to pound Gaza, and rocket fire continues to rain across southern Israel. Iran remains on high alert, and U.S. forces across the region are preparing for any eventuality. This is a fast-developing situation, and we will continue to bring you verified updates as they emerge. Thank you for watching Global Conflicts and Geopolitics. Stay informed, stay aware, and join us again for the latest in global military and geopolitical developments shaping our world.